So for the dresser project, I asked you guys to vote on what joint we're going to use for the edge banding, and overwhelmingly I got more votes for the rabbet, so that's what we're going to do. So for the dresser top, what we're going to do is we're actually going to cut it to 81 inches, and then when we cut the edge banding, it'll stick out an extra 1/4 inch, giving us a nice little overlip for the dresser. So when I look from the side, the top and bottom edge will stick over 1/4 inch, so that'll look real nice. All right, so what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you some tips on the table saw. We're going to actually do some zero clearance tips, and then we're actually going to cross-cut our plywood and rabbet the plywood edge and end, as well as rabbeting the edge banding, or cutting the edge banding and rabbeting it to fit the top and bottom of our project. So what I'm doing first is I'm going to true up one end to measure from my plywood. And what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to put a piece of masking tape over the top grain. So this is actually going to be the top of my dresser. And I'm going to put that face down on my table saw. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a very, very thin piece off because I have a dent right here. I'm going to come in 1/4 inch, take 1/4 inch off this end, and then treat this as my origin. So from here I'm going to measure 80.5 inches this direction, and then cut my board to my final length. So let's get to it. So I just started trying to make those cuts that I was talking about by cleaning off a 1/2 inch off the end of this piece of plywood. And I was going to use this drill press as a side outfeed table. But the problem is it wouldn't slide even with the crosscut slide very well, and my concerns are that I'm going to cut crooked. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a track saw setup with a circular saw. So I'm going to set up a piece of steel, a squared piece of steel, at 90 degrees from my cut, and then take my circular saw and then just cut through that. It's probably going to be the same way I'm going to have to cut this to length because it's just too big for my table saw. Maybe for smaller cuts. With that said, when it comes to rabbeting the edges, the ends of this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a portable router to cut the edges of my edge banding, and possibly also use the router to cut the rabbet in the front edge as well. So with that said, let's retool and redo it again. So I took my sheetrock square and I squared up my aluminum sled here so that my saw can ride perfectly perpendicular to the end grain here, giving me a true end. There we go, and a nice crisp edge, and the masking tape protected my plywood from any tear out. So I'm going to keep doing that. So what I did was I taped it on my keep piece so that my line here could be seen for my scrap piece. And now I'm going to set up my track and cut this piece off. So what I did was I found what the actual offset is from the outside tooth of this blade to the outside of the sled of the circular saw. And then I marked it on my plywood so that I could line up my guide with it using my sheetrock square. So now that I can clamp this in, I can cut it exactly 81.5 inches.
Last you.
start working in on to rabbiting the other parts. So what I did here is I actually put some clear packing tape over the table saw here to create a zero clearance between my blade and my fence. So it's a perfect zero clearance mark. Now, I also set it up so that from the inside of the blade to the fence is exactly 3/4 of an inch, which is the thickness of our plywood. So the edge banding is going to be ripped to its final width to cover our edge of our plywood. And we don't have to worry about squaring it because it already had gone through the squaring process. So it's exactly 81 inches. We just need to rip it down to its width, so they're going to be 2. But what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to rip additional pieces, since it's set up, for the other banding on the workpiece. Now, the other sides aren't exactly 3/4-6. They're a little bit less, but what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to rip them all to 3/4, so that if I wanted to keep everything the same style, I don't have to worry about the fact that I might have subtracted too much. But if I don't like how thick it is, I can always bring it down to a thinner amount. So, with that said, let's get to it. This concludes the top construction of the edge banding and the top and bottom piece. So next time we're going to cover the rabbiting of the edge banding and the top and bottom piece of the plywood. With that said, I hope everyone stays safe and have a great week. Hello. How's it going?
I'm trying to pour my tea into this bucket and mine fill it over to the garden.
Well, you know I'm recording right now. Can you wait 1 second?
Okay.
So